Guess what, Max? Said Max's sister Ruby. What? Said Max. It's Christmas Eve, Max. And you know who's coming? Who? Santa Claus is coming. That's who. When? Tonight, Max. He's coming tonight. Where? Spit, Max. Santa Claus is coming right down our chimney into our living room. How? That's enough questions, Max. You have to go to sleep fast before Santa Claus comes. But Max wanted to stay up to see Santa Claus. No, Max. Nobody ever sees Santa Claus. Why? Because... But Max didn't believe a word Ruby said. So he sneaked downstairs and waited for Santa Claus. Max waited a long time. Suddenly, zoom! Santa jumped down the chimney into the living room.
Don't look, Max.
Why?
Because nobody is supposed to see me.
Why?
Because everyone is supposed to be asleep in bed.
But Max peeked at Santa anyway.
Guess what, Max?
What?
It's time for me to go away and you to go to sleep.
Why?
Because...
Ruby came downstairs. What happened, Max? Who were you talking to? Where did you get that hat? Max, why is your blanket so humpy and bulgy? Because...
Hello, everybody. Welcome. What is this going on? All right. Merry Christmas Eve, everyone. I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show. I'm going to show a little bit of Christmas content today, but saving a lot of it for tomorrow. And I'll talk more about what's going to happen tomorrow I'm not going to be curating it. It's going to be my blender who's going to curate the show. So there's that. What do I got for you? I got a lot of stuff. So we watch old 16mm films, and from the avgeeks archive of 16mm. And I've been showing films, part of a series called Magic Moments from Encyclopedia Britannica that were made in the late 60s and early 70s, and they were a sharp departure from the traditional Encyclopedia Britannica films, which were just dry narration over lots of shots of whatever they were talking about. These were younger filmmakers who were inspired by things like what was happening in experimental cinema, what was happening in foreign new wave cinema, and drugs. So they're really kind of jarring if you compare the two. But this is a film called What's Happening. Enjoy.
On the side of you! On the bottom of you! On the top of you!
No, it's not that hit TV show, What's Happening, featuring Raj and Rerun and Dwayne and God, what was the sister's name? Oh man, I'm sure some of you know it, but no, this predates it, and this film was made whenever you saw that weird like. That's generally when the teacher would stop the projector and say, "Okay, so what's happening?" And then like all the kids would in the class are supposed to chime in with what's going on. A lot of fun. So I know it's a little late in the game, but maybe you haven't gotten your Christmas tree yet.
Wish you a happy Christmas with the perfect tree for Christmas. A real old-fashioned Christmas with a beautiful tree.
The snow-kissed plantation-grown Christmas tree is exclusive at Cavil's and 7-Eleven stores. Compare it with any other tree, and you'll see a startling difference. Luxuriously full, beautifully shaped, these trees are carefully pruned and trimmed each year of their growth. Don't buy a tree until you've seen the world's most beautiful Christmas trees, the snow-kissed trees.
You'll find them at 7-Eleven or at Cabell Minute Market. The perfect tree for Christmas at your Christmas tree stores.
'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap, when out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name.
Now, Dasher! Now, Dancer! Now, Prancer and Vixen! On Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen! To the top of the porch, to the tops of the wall! Now, dash away! Dash away! Dash away all!
As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too.
Whoa! Whoa!
And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled. His dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him, in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk. And laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight,
Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Oh, Castle Films. That was the film distribution company that marketed specifically to people who had projectors. So it was marketing to, basically you could go to your local camera store that you had your 16 millimeter or 8 millimeter film processed at, and you could order these films. And they were, some films were made specifically for Castle Films, but a lot of them were repurposed, where they licensed from animators, animation studios, and they would cut them down. Many of them are silent. Many of them are snippets from feature films. And so they are not rare. There's some that are probably rare, especially ones that are color. But there's so many of these. And, you know, if you go to an antique store and you see one, a little tiny, you know, W.C. Fields 8 millimeter film selling for $50, don't buy it. It's not worth it. It's interesting. I have people over the years who've approached me and said, hey, I have this box of our home movies, and in it is this Laurel and Hardy film, and I'm wondering, does this have any value? And I'm like, that doesn't have any value, but your home movies do. Those are very valuable because those are cultural documents, not only of your family, but of how we used to live. So it's kind of weird that people don't think that way, but they assume, they're like, oh, it's this little tiny Mickey Mouse cartoon. I'm like, well, no, it's not rare. All right, this is a promotional film. See if you can guess what it's for. It's The Land of Everyday Miracles.
To most people, perhaps, miracles are a manifestation of spiritual forces. By way of vision, a miracle is any feat or occurrence so unusual as to seem miraculous. A wonderful thing, a marvel. Our lives are filled with miracles, and so many are they, that in this land of ours, miracles have become commonplace. The miracles of nature are all around us, in rocks hewn through centuries by wind and rain, in cascading cataracts run from caverns below, in the awesome beauty of a canyon, in the majesty of a thundering waterfall. These wonders of natural phenomena were here before us. In 3 centuries of occupation upon this continent, what has man accomplished to match their being? He has written words simple in themselves, but whose wondrous meaning shaped the miracles of nature into a nation. And more, forged the dignity of man's individual freedom, thereby creating a nation which in due process of its inspired heritage has become a land of everyday miracles. But in the beginning, man-made miracles were born of necessity, as the early colonials started their new lives with little more than raw courage in their hands. Shelter, clothing, and food were ever-present problems that daily confronted the pioneer families. And news of the young country had spread around the world. Immigrants were swarming to our shores, seeking a haven of shelter and a rebirth of hope. This fusion of diverse races, religions, and creeds was a mighty force of purpose, inspired by a determination to live in peace and to prosper under the blessings of liberty. But a lesson always before us had been learned in other lands. Since the beginning of man, hunger and ever-present famine had been accepted conditions among a large percentage of the peoples of the world, full of the challenge. In America, it's increasingly evident that to remain strong, we must grow things an expanding nation could eat. To the west, there were millions of miles of uncharted wilderness, unmarked by wheel or plow. It would be a miracle indeed if the valleys and the plains and the desert could produce an abundance for the ever-expanding migration to the shores of America. Staunch hearts and strong arms made steady inroads
into the seemingly impregnable wilderness. As the land was so painstakingly cleared, the earth was turned and precious seeds entrusted to the care of the virgin soil. To these pioneer families, the first meager harvest was a thankful and blessed miracle. For the staff of life was literally earned by the sweat of their brows.
Will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread.
Yes, the early families of America learned that much of the land was fertile,
Lead us not into
and the rewards of their labors were security and abundance.
power.
Thus they settled farther and farther from the centers of population. But other sections of the fast-growing nation would have to depend on the new farmers for produce. And we were beginning to realize that this was indeed a big country of great distances. Thus came about the early miracles of transportation. The lumbering Conestoga wagons carried freight and food and assorted articles of daily use halfway across the nation. Rivers and canals became highways of commerce. A miracle of its day was the Pony Express, which carried the United States mail in a fast and often dangerous fashion. And wonder of wonders was the great iron horse, whose chugging and puffing and grinding wheels heralded a new era that lessened the distance between farms and cities and welded the daily lives of all our citizens more closely together. And the ingenuity of people nurtured in freedom began to contribute other miracles to the development of the country. Charles Newbold patented the iron plow, which lengthened the furrows across the plains and the prairies. Eli Whitney, and with the seeds mechanically removed from the cotton fiber, new horizons were opened to the planters of the South. And Cyrus McCormick, a blacksmith's son, invented a reaping machine, which would one day cut paths of plenty through seas of grain. And Samuel Morse developed the first practical telegraph, and the words clicked like magic through strands of wire. Passing almost without notice at the time was the discovery of a rich mineral beneath the earth when Colonel Drake drilled a well in Pennsylvania. But a miracle that is today as commonplace as the rising sun occurred in Boston when a man conceived the idea of transmitting the human voice by electrical waves.
Mr. Watson, come in here. I want you.
These words of Alexander Graham Bell marked the invention of the telephone.
Mr. Bell, I heard every word you said distinctly.
And about the same time, another man who had been to school only 3 months in his entire life announced from his laboratory in Menlo Park, New Jersey, that he could now reproduce the human voice from a cylinder made largely of wax. Soon after, Thomas Alva Edison perfected the incandescent lamp, and the age of light was to come to cities and villages and farms. Let's take a look at America in the few years before the turn of the century. The gasoline-driven automobile made its appearance. And these documentary pictures reveal an historic moment on the bleak sand dunes of Kitty Hawk, when the Wright brothers launched their plane into flight. When the gay 90s burst upon us, we adjudged this nation to be a land of abundant plenty. It was a time of bicycles built for more than two, of good fellowship and good food. But a disturbing contrast had appeared in this land, now populated from shore to shore and border to border. In a nation of ever-growing abundance, there was a hidden hunger. Strange that people who had food to eat were starving. But there were newer and greater miracles to come. Paradoxically enough, their beginning was not within the confines of our shores, but across the sea, where a French girl brought into unrealized yet practical application the invisible world that lay beneath the lens of his microscope. And again, on the opposite side of the globe, the island of Java, where a Dutch physician named Eichmann contributed to a miracle that was another link in a chain of events which accumulatively were to bring about a miracle closely akin to life itself.
You will notice, Anna, my experiment is now proven correct. When the chickens eat the brown rice, they remain healthy. But when the chickens eat the white rice, they are sick. Some of them are dead.
Then it is something that they eat that makes them sick.
No. No, it is something they don't eat.
Some mysterious element lacking in the food was necessary to sustain life. That is what Eichmann began to realize. Some years later, that specific life-giving substance was isolated and identified. Dr. Casimir Funk was the first to give the mysterious food elements a name.
Vita means life, and the word amine is a chemical term. I will call it vitamine.
But the problem was to isolate, identify, and reproduce it synthetically so that substantial amounts could be manufactured for the greatest use and benefit. It was an American chemist, Robert Williams, who achieved this goal in Columbia University after 30 years of research, inspired by Dr. Edward Bright Vedder.
But how do you know that synthetic B1 is the same as natural vitamins?
By feeding it to animals and pigeons. The reaction is identical.
Well, aren't there plenty of vitamins in what we eat?
There would be if they weren't largely milled out of grains or boiled out of vegetables. You see, we hope to put vitamins back in the food.
At first, it was difficult for us to realize the magnitude of Williams' contribution. But the lesson was before us. In some sections of our country where there was food in abundance, malnutrition had settled among the people like a plague. For more than a century, in wide, productive areas, the land itself was slowly dying. Our farmers had planted the same crops. The health of the populace had suffered with the sameness of diet. At last, a rare expansion, a miracle of scientific planning, as well as long hours of toil for the farmer. The story of soil conservation is a great victory against the unrelenting force of nature, whose rain and winds had for centuries dissipated the land. Irrigation reclaimed vast arid areas to fertility as the dammed up waters from snow-crested peaks were released to the thirsty earth. Early miracles of the plow and of the threshing machine had left an impressive legacy in the shape of ingenious and efficient machines that widened the scope of man's endeavor and made the farmer one of the biggest businessmen in the country. The grain, once so prayerfully planted, had become a rich golden carpet over the endless plains. And so we enter a modern age with modern miracles. But who can say, even in these amazing 20th century times, what constitutes a miracle? Is it the millions of automobiles that fill our streets with traffic? The miracle was as profound when the horseless carriage first chugged up the street. Is it the sleek streamliner streaking westward 100 miles an hour? The Pony Express was an equal miracle in its day. But the modern airplane has pierced the wall of sound, traveling faster than sound itself. And yet who can say it is a greater miracle than the cumbersome wings that first lifted man skyward? And do you remember the pioneer woman in the crude log cabin? She would be amazed to know that the staff of life is today enriched by the miracle of vitamins, while the milk we drink is protected by the miracle of pasteurization. Yes, in those two words, enriched and pasteurization, we find the sources of two of the most helpful and healthful miracles in our everyday lives. Miracles that can be traced back through the years to the discoveries of Louis Pasteur, father of fermentology and pasteurization. The inspiration of his research still burns brightly in America. The story of enrichment, which really had its beginning at Columbia University, where Dr. Williams finally isolated vitamin B1, came into full being in our nation's capital. The daily paper brings news of all the world. Washing machines, typewriters, the radio, motion pictures, miracles undreamed of by the pioneer Americans are everyday events in our lives. And has the ingenuity of man surpassed the miracles that were awaiting us when our country was a virgin wilderness? It is certain that no modern-day miracle can be likened to the inspired principles which our nation was founded. Then the truth is self-evident. It is the heritage of freedom and free enterprise that has made possible the continuing miracle. We have kept faith with our forefathers. We worship as we please. We speak as we please. We have freedom from want. We are the best fed, the healthiest nation of people on the earth. Cognizant of our past blessings, we dedicate ourselves to the future. To America the beautiful, America the bountiful, the America we love, land of everyday miracles. I love every inch of her prairie land, each stone on her mountain side. I love every drop of the water clear that flows in her rivers wide. I love every tree, every blade of grass within Columbia's gates. The queen of the earth is the land of my birth, my own
So is it just a promotional film for America? I feel like there's got to be another sponsor in there, but I have not found any documentation that shows me what that is. It was made by Warner Brothers. It was a Technicolor short, of which I have not a Technicolor version. It's a color version that's obviously faded some, but generally there's someone sponsored this, and it has that feel. I mean, it's possible that Warner Brothers just did it as a short, just a patriotic short to say how great America was, but man, it just has a feeling like it's like the United States Chamber of Commerce or the American Enterprise Foundation, one of these free enterprise entities. But it is lily white. I mean, people have pointed out it is super white in there. Yeah. So as a counterpoint to this, well, it's not really a counterpoint, but it is something that's like, our country is so great. It's the land of everyday miracles. So, of course, after you graduate from high school, you should be okay with being drafted to defend the nation. So here is a Cornet film that was shown to young men in the 50s to prepare them for being drafted or for enlisting in service, which was something that was happening a lot during the Korean and Vietnam War. So here we go. Nation to Defend.
There it is. The nation to defend. Our nation. Yours and mine. At least, this is a part of it. There's more. A lot more. It's a big nation, this country of ours. From the rocky coast of New England to the shores of California. 3,000 miles of America. I'm interested in this America. I've got a stake in this country of ours, just as you have. I could be one of your neighbors in a small town, or one of the big city people you know. Maybe the fellow who sat next to you at the game on Saturday. Or I could just as well be sitting with you in the audience. Because, you see, I want to look at these things with you and talk about these things with you. Today, a lot of you are thinking about the day you'll be called into the armed forces, called to serve your nation, and if necessary, to defend it. You think of the friends you'll have to leave, the sacrifices you'll have to make, and finally, when the time comes to go, maybe you'll think, what is it that needs defending? Why does it have to be defended? I think we know the answers. I think we know that what we have is worth defending.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That's part of our nation. Those are principles we've defended ever since the Declaration was written.
And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Know what that means? Sure you do.
These men were setting up a new government, a new nation. They knew they must not fail. And to make it work, they were willing to give all their money and their lives, everything they had if necessary.
Everything they had. Sometimes we forget the work and the danger these men went through to found our nation. They were men of peace, citizens much like us. But when they realized that their rights were in danger, when they could no longer negotiate with the enemy, they left their fields, their homes, everything they had, to defend the kind of life they believed in. You know the story of those men. Stand your ground. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here. And so for the new nation, they fought. And for the ideas that nation stood for. They fought in the towns. They fought in the fields. Sometimes women joined in the defense of their homes and families. These were difficult years, years of suffering and toil. Yet the patriots stood together in their common cause. Some of the patriots, like George Washington, gave years of devoted service and leadership to the nation. Some, like Chaim Solomon, gave their fortunes to the nation. Many, like Nathan Hale, gave their lives. And still more, many more, gave years of military service in the defense of their country. Their country was a little group of 13 colonies. And yet, because they defended it, that country survived, grew into the great nation that you and I live in today. That nation has always been devoted to peace. But all through our history, there have been times when there was no peace, when differences could not be compromised, when the last resort was to fight. Men who loved freedom, who believed in our way of life, have not hesitated to defend freedom. Ordinary citizens, mostly young men, have fought to defend the kind of America they believed in. And they have done this not because they loved war, but because they hated tyranny. In 1917, the fight against tyranny took us far from our own shores, into other lands, to join with other nations who were fighting to keep our kind of freedom. In 1941, we embarked on a great struggle that was fought in many different places over the globe. Once more, American men gave everything they had for the nation. Once more, we joined with men of other nations in the common defense of freedom. Once more, we hoped tyranny was ended. We want, most of all, to live in peace with the other nations of the world. And we have always been willing to discuss world problems and eager to find peaceful ways of settling differences. But at the same time, we have been on guard against tyranny, any kind of tyranny. We have been willing to fight aggression wherever it threatens to destroy the things we believe in. Things such as justice, fair play, the right for everyone to have an equal chance. We have been willing to join men of other nations who believe in these same ideals of freedom. And always, as our nation has needed men, men respond. If it were not for men, men willing to defend the nation and the ideals it represents, you and I might lose all we have. Our freedoms, our opportunities, and perhaps our lives. And what about the future? As long as we have a nation, we may be called upon to defend it. Today, tomorrow, in the future. George Washington said, "To be prepared for war is one of the most effectual means of preserving the peace." Daniel Webster said, "God grants liberty only to those who love it, and are always ready to guard and defend it." Woodrow Wilson said, "To such a task we dedicate our lives, our fortunes, everything that we are, and everything that we have." Everything that we have to defend our freedom. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's our kind of freedom. Remember, when you are called to serve your nation, you're called to preserve your freedom and ensure your way of life. You're called to ensure your freedom to choose your religion and the kind of work you want to do, to ensure your freedom of speech, to ensure your right to the pursuit of happiness. And you can think of more rights that you have. You know what they are. But wait. Maybe you think, it's harder now than ever before. The problems of today are greater than other men have had to face. Well, listen. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. These words were written by Thomas Paine, an American patriot, in 1776. And ever since, in the times that try men's souls, men have left their homes and their families to defend the nation. Our nation. Mine and yours.
Coronet does not assume any responsibility for the content. So if you get killed, don't sue us. And if you don't approve of our message, don't hold it against us. We are just working with other entities. So I did some research. I did some digging. There's this wonderful resource that a university put together called the Media Lantern, which is a database of old trade journals, of an educational screen, film-related stuff. Some home amateur-oriented, and some of it is actually for like business, industry journals. And there's I found Land of Everyday Miracles, and it listed the sponsor. I knew there had to be a sponsor, and it probably would have listed it in the title. If I had a complete print that wasn't so splicey, it probably would have said Warner Pathé, and in conjunction with the sponsor, because that's usually the way it rolls. But I just couldn't find it. Anyways, anybody want to hazard a guess? Hazard a guess. List it in the comments. Even if you want to guess like what industry, it's a company that sponsored it. If you want to guess what industry it is about, I started getting a sense when they were curving what they were talking about to something very specific. But I'll let you think about that. In the meantime, I'd like to propose a toast with this film that's in my collection that was actually made by a friend of mine, Tom Whiteside, who's based in Durham, who's also a collector and also experimental filmmaker. And he's one of the first people that gave me a chance to actually show my films as AV Geeks and not behind some bands. And so I owe him a lot for that. This is a film where he took a whole reel of commercials and edited them in a wonderfully choppy way. This is Ding Ding Ding.
Ladies and gentlemen, everybody. I'd like to propose a gentleman, everybody. Ladies and toes. I'd like to propose it. Ladies and good life. I'd like to propose, gentlemen, everybody. Good life. Gentlemen, everybody, toast. I'd like to propose a good life. Toast. To good life. Toast. To good life. Toast. To I'd like to propose, gentlemen, everybody. Ladies and I'd like to propose a good life. Toast. To the good life, gentlemen, everybody. Ladies and toast. To I'd like to propose a gentleman, everybody. Ladies and good life. To the 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 good life. Toast. To the good life, gentlemen. Everybody. Ladies and I'd like to propose a good life. To the good life. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody, toast. To the I'd like to propose a ladies and to the good life. Good life. To the ladies and I'd like to propose it. Gentlemen, everybody. Ladies, life. Good life. To the good life. To the good life. Toast. To the toast. To the gentlemen, everybody. Gentlemen, everybody. Ladies, to the good life. Good life. Good life. Toast. I'd like to propose it. I'd like to propose it. I'd like to propose it. Gentlemen, everybody.
Everybody's going, what was that? So that was a friend of mine, Tom Whiteside, he basically took a reel of the same commercial and cut it up and then reprinted it. And when he sent it to the lab, they printed it weird. So he sent me the weird copy, and he has the original. But yeah, it's kind of a cut up. Very similar to William S. Burroughs' cut-ups. And if you like this, I would say investigate my other experimental filmmaker favorite person, Martin Arnold. Martin Arnold did some amazing films with feature films that you might recognize, including Passage Locked, and then something I can't remember the other two. They're in French. But anyways, Martin Arnold. So I totally recommend investigating him. But let me just propose this toast. Instead of champagne, here's a toast of coffee. And thank you, Mike, for buying us some coffee. But thank you for your support and your kindness. And I'm hoping that 2021 is better for you and for everyone and for our loved ones and people we hate and just everything all around. So to the good life, which is sitting watching a screen, which is what most of 2020 was, sitting and watching a screen. But yes, thank you, Mike, for the coffee. That's a way you can support us. Another way is you can just hit like. Just go hit like. Even if you hate it, hit like. And share it with friends and family and enemies. And also, you can go to avgeeks.com and see other things that we've done over the years. I'm probably during Christmas. I'm not working. So tomorrow, as I said, tomorrow is a special 4-hour AV Geeks show where it's going to be curated by our blender. What this means is that our blender is going to be pulling little clips from a stock footage site that we run called Archival Clips. And what it did is it pulled out all the clips that had the word Christmas or winter or Santa, and it's going to mix them together and show them. And it's going to do it semi-randomly for the most part. So that's what tomorrow's going to be. And it might be fascinating because there's going to be some home movie footage of Christmas in there. And some other kind of schlocky Christmas things, but it also could be entirely maddening and excruciatingly difficult to watch. So, what is it? Your mileage may vary. So, this is what I'm doing instead of. I wanted to celebrate Christmas, but I also didn't want to work on Christmas. So I'm letting my blender do all the work. So hopefully. You can join us tomorrow. If not, I will see you on Monday. We'll be back doing screenings on Monday. And thank you again so much. It means a great deal. I was actually talking to a good friend of mine yesterday, Rick Prelinger, who's kind of my mentor. And he has a vast archive of educational industrial films. And I was talking about how important this streaming thing has been for me because this is, one, it gives me something to look forward to every day. And two, it's been allowing me to kind of push myself and explore more of my collection for you guys. So I'm hoping that you are getting value out of this, but really I'm getting a lot of value out of this. And so thank you for being there for that. I feel very lucky that I have the ability to do this. And so thank you so much for your eyeballs. That's what this is about, putting eyeballs on it. So anyways, maybe you'll tune in tomorrow, maybe not, I don't know, it's up to you. But otherwise, I will see you on Monday. And everybody have a good Christmas, or at least, and if you don't celebrate Christmas, I understand. But have a good time. Have a good, relaxing time. Reach out to your family, your friends, people who are close to you, your pets. Even if you're not a person who observes Christmas, this is a kind of a nation-mandated time that people hang out, or you have to take time off. So hopefully you can spend this time in a way that will recharge your batteries and allow you to rewind and to love each other. Everybody, take care. Everybody, to the good life. Oh crap, I totally forgot to tell people who sponsored the Land of Everyday Miracles. And I just read it in somebody said Standard Oil was behind Land of Everyday Miracles, but that was not the case. God, I probably lost everybody. So anyways, it was Standard Foods. Standard Foods. And I looked up, so, God, I got so caught up in ding, ding, ding that I didn't even think about it. Here is what I found in the Business Screen Journal. And it is Land of Everyday Miracles sponsors Standard Brands. Not Standard Foods, Standard Brands. And it was Warner Pathé. And Standard Brands, according to Wikipedia, was a merger of a bunch of baking companies and food companies. So Fleischmann's, Royal Baking Company, E.W. Gillette, which was a Toronto-based baking company, Wilder Food Products, and Chase Sanborn Coffee. It was, by 1940, it was the number 2 brand of packaged goods after General Foods. It bought Planters, it bought Curtis Candy, and then it merged with Nabisco in 1980. So this was Standard Brands. So I had a sense that it was related to food, specifically because they kept talking about vitamins and they kept talking about farmers. And, they kind of sprinkled in all the innovations as far as, the ones that we know about, Edison and Morse and Bell and the Wright brothers and stuff like that, and Madame Curie. But they really kept talking about vitamins, and they kept talking about, growing food and farmers and the importance of farmers and stuff like that. And I was like, this has got to be food related in some way. And I wasn't sure if it was like a fertilizer company or if it was something. But yeah, there you go. Standard Brands. So, anyhow, everybody have a good Christmas. And I will see you soon.